Sri Lanka is one united nation again and fast on its path to a new future. A future for which a generation of Sri Lankans have paid for dearly, some with the ultimate sacrifice. The Sri Lanka Rupawahini Corporation, being the premier television network in Sri Lanka, considered it our duty to be actively involved in the formulation of that future. Thus, we bring you Checkmate, the stories of some extraordinary people who have gone that extra mile, set out that extra hour to achieve success in very ordinary circumstances, so that you too may be encouraged to aspire for such greatness. Checkmate, a new Sri Lanka, together we can. Hello everyone and welcome to another program of Checkmate. As you know, everyone does not make it on our list to be guests on Checkmate. Our production team takes very great care in selecting our guests. There is a meticulous screening process, and it is those that have surpassed the expectations of others, those who have gone that extra mile, who can actually be role models to future generations of Sri Lankans that make it on our guest list on Checkmate. And tonight we have a guest who is a personification of all that the Checkmate ethos stands for. She is a Professor Emeritus. She was a former Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo. She has a D.Lit, a PhD, an MA from England, a BA Honours, and her list goes on, and I don't think we can do justice by just reading her CV, so we're going to enter a full conversation with her as we go on. But you must also know this: she has been presented the Order of the Rising Sun by the Emperor of Japan himself. She's a Fulbright Fellow to Princeton in USA, and she's also a Fellow of the Japan Foundation. And I speak of none other than Sri Lanka's very own and our proud product, Professor Kusuma Karunaratne. Ayubowan, Professor. Welcome to Checkmate.
Thank you.
Well, we start our stories, as all stories start, building you with a little bit of your profile. I'm sure most Sri Lankans know you, but since you're our guest tonight at Rupawahini, we'd like to start with a little bit of your background. I know that your early years were not in Colombo. Maybe you'd like to speak a little bit about your school trip.
I come from Matara, and I was brought up in a kind of a traditional family, and I lived in the village actually, and had my primary education in the village school, and then I went to Vijita Vidyalaya, that's in Dikwella, and had my education up to the university admissions. There was no advanced level at that time. It was HSE, Higher School Certificate.
Yeah, HSC.
HSC. So by doing that, then entered Peradeniya University, and I had a very pleasant life as a child.
I am sure you did. And then you go on to Peradeniya. As you know, the time is limited, so we're going to fast track you now to your undergraduate days, and then you started lecturing. And then a very interesting anecdote. At Peradeniya, you meet your partner in crime, your companion for life, and that's a very interesting meeting. And I hear that when you were met by Professor Karunaratne, who later on became Professor Karunaratne, then also a young teacher at the campus.
Yes, he was a lecturer in the engineering faculty.
Yes. But he had I hear, a very unique system of measuring the future wife on a millihelen scale. He had made up his own scale of how to pick his future bride. You want to talk on this millihelen scale.
I think being an engineer, he thought that for everything or for anything there was some kind of measure, and to measure the beauty of a girl, he thought there is no other way, but he had his own way.
This is what he says. You take the height from hips upwards should be 1.6 times the height from the toe to hip. Her mouth should be 1.6 times the width of her nose. Her beauty must be at least 500 millihelens, and that's so. If you have, in his expectation, you have gone beyond 500 millihelens. His scale.
What he thought was you cannot expect a Helen of Troy, so somebody below that he was happy with.
But I'm sure that he's very happy. And you have two children.
Yes, we have two sons. Both have done their PhD and both are working.
Yeah.
And
they're both in Sri Lanka?
No, they are both out. And my elder son has two little girls, and I'm a grandmother.
Congratulations. Now, Professor, you entered the University of Peradeniya, that was to lecture in 1960. And why pick lecturing as a career? What was your, I mean, we are going to come later on to what you actually experienced in your career, but why lecturing?
Actually, from my childhood, I was very interested in studies and interested in literature. And I joined Peradeniya University in 1960 and spent 4 years as an undergraduate, and I got first class honors in my final examination. And then within few months, I was asked to come and serve as a temporary lecturer in the department, which I was very pleased with. And then after 3 months, I was made a permanent lecturer. That was in 64.
Yes.
And I spent 2 years in England doing my master's.
Yes. That was at SOAS.
SOAS. I was in Essex University for 1 year, and then I was at the latter part I was in London University, School of Oriental and African Studies.
Yes.
And then having
part of the University of London.
That's right, yes. Having come back, I came back to Peradeniya, and in 1970 I came to Colombo as a lecturer, Colombo University.
Yes. You've obviously had an extensive career, and this is something that I'd like to touch on our future segments, but just to, for the sake of our viewers who perhaps may be some future young Sri Lankan ladies in your situation, you seem to have had very interesting life personally as well as academically, but this personal life. You say we had, or your husband says, we had decided to postpone having children until she obtained her PhD. And then you tell this to a friend in London. And then you go and ask your husband, or your friend asks your husband, Sam, can't ladies without PhD degrees give birth to babies? You want to talk about that?
That was my husband's friend from Moratorium University.
Yeah.
He was inquiring, aren't you going to have children? Then my husband told him, my wife is doing her PhD, so we have to postpone.
Yeah.
Then he said, Sam, she can have a PhD anytime, but to have a child, to have children, there is a age limit or some time. So then
you can't have it all the time.
You can't have it all the time. So then I postponed doing my PhD, and we had two children. And
both were born overseas, or?
No, here in Sri Lanka.
Right.
Yes.
And then your D.Litt, the honoris causa.
Yes.
Just want to talk a little bit about.
From Colombo University, after I retired, the University of Colombo honored me with a D.Litt. That's D.Litt honoris causa, as you said. And then along with that, I was made Professor Emeritus, because when you work as a professor and after retiring, you can't use the title professor unless the university confers that.
Yes. Yeah. And then this is very interesting. I think you would have been one of the very few ladies, if not the only lady, to receive. There are several first females that you have done, which we'll get to in the next segment, but this Order of the Rising Sun from Japan, you've done extensive work with Japan, which is an area we'd like to talk on, but particularly on this honor from the Emperor. You want to talk a little bit? Yeah,
actually that was given to me for the service that I had done, that is continued service to strengthen cultural relations between Japan and Sri Lanka. Actually, as a young lecturer, I met two Japanese people, two Japanese who came to Sri Lanka. One later became a professor, the other one became an ambassador, and then they were my first contacts. They studied, they learned Sinhala from me, and I learned Japanese from them, and I started liking that language, country and culture. Then also Professor Sarath Chandra and Professor Rajakaruna taught us Japanese literature and culture. So I developed liking, and from that time onwards, for more than 38 years, now about 40 years, I did a lot, in my opinion, to encourage or to strengthen.
Let me just correct you, it's not only your opinion, most of Sri Lanka seems to think so.
To strengthen cultural relations between the two countries, and I taught Japanese literature to our students, and while in Japan I gave more than 10 lectures in different universities on Sri Lankan culture, literature, and also about Sri Lankan women. And then we had we started master's degree in Japanese studies program in Colombo University.
Yes.
And in that we were able to get down professors from Japan, and then the relationship, friendship and cultural attachments went on.
That finally led to...
Yes, so then in fact this selecting people for this Order of the Rising Sun, that was a very long procedure done for quite some time. In fact they interviewed my husband also separately.
Really?
Yes, so it was a hard kind of decision, and finally...
Professor, you have brought us honor. You have brought us honor
you.
in several other fields which we'll discuss. But we have to go to a quick break. But before we do that, we are going to be in the company of Professor Karunaratne for a lot of time to come now. But before we go to a break, I just want to remind everyone about our fan page at the bottom of your screen now. We are on Facebook. We are also on email. As you know, Checkmate has been constantly reviewing our own programming and appreciating your comments and thinking of ways as to how we can make it better for you. So do continue writing into us. We are particularly impressed by our overseas viewers who probably watch us at odd times. Thank you very much for all your comments, and thank you for all of you who are interacting with us on Facebook. Thank you very much. Do keep those comments coming in as to how we may improve, even people that you may know of or you may think creditable enough to be invited on Checkmate. So we're going to go to a short break now in the company of Professor Karunaratne. We'll be back with you in a jiffy. Hello and welcome back. As you know, we are in the company of Professor Kusuma Karunaratne tonight on Checkmate. Professor, let's talk a little bit about your career now. This is a segment that we speak of your experiences and what you may have overcome if you had to. But let's start by one of your several firsts. You were the first female student to earn a first-class honours degree.
In Sinhala.
In Sinhala.
Yes.
And then you went on to be a first of several others. So you want to just...
Yes, first permanent lecturer in the department of Sinhala. Then I became the first woman, first female head of department of Sinhala. Then first female who did Sinhala special to hold a post of dean. I was the Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies and acting Vice Chancellor. There again, the first female who did Sinhala Special to hold that position, so it went on like that.
And these probably would have been some of the reasons. The first woman, first female, you were also awarded the Ruhunu Putra Sammana Award.
That's right, yes.
But talking of that, your extensive career as a lecturer in university and going into that area, you know, when there's that old saying that if a tap is running, don't fix it. But we have seen constant regimes, not just one, but several regimes trying to tinker with the university system, and obviously everyone is seeing that there is some change that needs to be done. Several people think so. In fact, some people have actually said that there is something that we need to do with the product, a final outcome that we send out to the society. There are several issues here. But in your experience as a lecturer who finally went on to be a Vice Chancellor, What areas do you think we can change in the present structure?
Actually, university education is not just for students or graduates to go for jobs straight away. And whatever discipline you study in the university, you get that kind of training, leadership, while being in the university. And now the student numbers are very high. So therefore, maybe the opportunities they get is a little less limited. And also a very weak point that we see now is during our time, we went for lectures, and when we didn't have lectures, we were in the library. And we used the library a lot, and we did extra reading. But now the students, they kind of limit their studies to lectures and classroom work. And of course, now in the universities we have this semester system, whereas during our time it was end of year examination. So during the year we had lectures, and at the end of the year the examinations. But now continuous assessment, they have assignments to write, they have classroom presentations. So we expect better results from this, but I am not sure whether we are getting the amount as we expected.
But surely, now coming back to the point, I remember even not just your days, even our days, we had that end of year exam where some people actually complained that we were used to a parrot-like repetition. We just read and read. But of course, like you said, we went to libraries and read.
Yes.
And we Aravishwa Danuma, we would collect. Yeah. But whatever it is, now there is continuous assessment, there is constant studying required of students. So if that is happening, there at the end result, there appears to be a lack of this Vishwadhanuma. So obviously there is something that needs to be done. What's your answer, I mean, from your experience?
I think some students, they complain that they have no time for extra work, extra reading, because all the time they have assignments to write and then other presentations. But I don't think that's an excuse, because students during this period, of course, during our time it was only studying, extra sports and other things were necessary, were done. But today I think some students, they need a little money, and some students go for work, part-time work. So that kind of problems are there. But anyway, the basic shortcoming is that they limit their knowledge to what is taught in classroom. Which
as a former lecturer, now I ask this question because there are several moves now, or I mean any parent who can afford it would love to send their children abroad. I mean I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going abroad. You and I have both gone abroad and studied, but at later stage. How do we make our university, even when it comes to our children or children of our generations, how do we make it more attractive for parents to think of our universities as the first choice? There will be several people now, particularly in Colombo and the suburbs, who think our children shouldn't go to Sri Lankan universities because that's not the place. But how would you react to that? I mean, how do we make our universities more attractive to Sri Lankan children?
Actually, even today, there is no doubt that our standards are fairly high. And our students, having done maybe not the university education, maybe advanced level, and also maybe after doing the first degree, when they go abroad to foreign universities, they do very well. Sometimes they become the first in the batch in class. So our standards are still very high, and I think we should be happy about it. But then now some people expect that the graduates should be able to find jobs soon after they graduate. Finding jobs is not just with the examination results you get. There are other things, other skills that you have to build up during your student career. And some students, they are interested, some are not interested. So that's something that we have to look into.
How do we grapple with this mentality? This is something that some of our previous guests have also commented on. How do we grapple with this mentality of accumulation of certificates on the wall? As opposed to, I mean, I'm not saying that accumulation of certificates is bad. It's nice to have certificates. But when the trend seems to be more what certificate you can frame and hang on the wall rather than what education you can accumulate in yourself, how do we change that trend?
Yeah. I'm reminded of a Japanese writer's novel, Natsume Soseke's Kokoro. In that one, there is a professor who is very kind of not only learned, he thinks very far, right?
Progressive thinking.
Progressive thinking, and his student also follows him, and then he takes his degree certificate home, and the father is so upset that he did not bring it in a sort of good way.
Yeah.
Then for the student, the degree or the certificate is not very important, but for the father it's very important. He can show the neighbors that his son has done a degree and all that. So getting a degree and collecting certificates is not the main thing. Getting the degree is very essential. Basic degree is very essential for everybody.
But acquiring knowledge.
Acquiring knowledge is the most important thing. While doing the degree, you can do so many things, like, as I said, improving your skills. One thing is English. Now, students today, of course, they are now thinking that it is important. But then some time ago, in the university, they were taught English. They were discouraged. And also computer skills. If these two are there, I think the students can go very far with their basic degree plus other skills.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned English. I wanted to ask you this. We are now in a culture that appreciate culture on one side. Then this yearning for English. Now, there is this thought that necessarily if you know English, you're posh. But the moment you become posh, you don't become a Sinhalese or a Sri Lankan.
That is not true.
Exactly. I want you to comment on this, that you can still be at heart a cultured Sri Lankan.
Definitely.
With the knowledge of English.
Yes.
And you want to comment on
That's right. Because learning English, now it's not difficult today because you have so many ways of learning English. Methods and books are there, internet is there. So they have more opportunities than what we had those days. Now in my case, as a child, going to school, and during the interval I used to run to the library and I used to borrow the book A.L. Bright Stories. I don't think you have seen. Several levels, like one in purple line, then the other one green, the other one blue, like that. So we were very interested in reading books. And reading English books and reading the newspaper, they can improve English very quite a lot.
Yeah, but then you don't necessarily have to become a Kalusudha, do you? I mean,
No.
This concept of English, and the moment you become learned in English that you are a Kalusudha and therefore not a Sri Lankan, is something that we need to change, because as you will definitely remember, even in university life, the moment you go in there seems to be, during the days of heavy ragging, I'm talking a few years back, if you, for example, happen to come from a Colombo school or the so-called elite school, your ragging becomes that much more intense and you become almost an outcast. And that is one disincentive. We must talk on these issues. Luckily, we don't have that now because there have been subsequent moves to move away from ragging. But how do we get this cultural divide, at least in university where people, it's a cream, 0.5% that goes in. How do we get over?
That's a wrong concept. Even today they say Kadua for English. That means if you don't know English, you are finished. So by learning English, you don't have to change your ways. You have to show that you are educated and you can speak in English, and you should be proud of it. But then that doesn't mean that the person who cannot converse in English is to be let down.
Absolutely.
Yes. So culturally also, learning English and practicing and speaking in English and conversation or whatever,
so it's
writing
both ways,
in English,
isn't it?
both ways.
It's
and
both ways.
As long as you know who you are and where you stand, I think learning English will add to your position.
Let's on this whole cultural thing. We have the lovely benefit of having you here with so much of experience in Sri Lankan culture and our university system, as indeed in Japan. I'd like to speak a little bit about Japan and your experiences for the benefit of our viewers. Now, you mentioned a nice word in our previous conversation that I just want to, when we were discussing Japan
Yes.
after the war, 48,
Yeah.
they say almost 80% of Japan industry was down. And then youth, unemployment was ripe, economically they were downtrodden. But by the time the Korean War started, 6-7 years, 56, 57, Japan was once again in the industrial market. Now, we have a similar situation in Sri Lanka. After 30 years of a war that sapped our lifeblood, we've been given a new future. How can we use that Japanese example to rebuild Sri Lanka?
Yes, I think in Japan there is a word, as I mentioned to you earlier, if you have failed in something, then your friend or somebody who wishes you good will say, Gambatte kudasai. Please try again.
Gambatte kudasai.
Gambatte kudasai. Please try again. Kudasai means please. Yes. Please try again. And then the person, that individual will say, Gambarimasu. That means, yes, I will try. Now, in some other cultures, they will say, just forget about it. But their attitude and that concept is different.
Get up and try.
Get up and try. And in fact, they have been successful. So I think even our young students, what they should do is, you should not think that you are unable to learn English, you are unable to work in English. You can. Everybody can. If we could, why not you? Everybody can.
Yeah. That's exactly the ethos that I'm... But Professor, beyond us, I mean, this is very good that we discussed this on AI. How do we, as a Sri Lankan society, as people, intellectuals like you, how do we get this message across to the masses that if Japan could do it, if so many other examples could do it, that this the unfortunate negative mentality that Sri Lankans should sit back, ane apita ba, apita na, karume. How do we get beyond this and get our youth, particularly our future generations, come on, gather up, get up, build a better Sri Lanka? How do we get there?
Yeah, actually karume, the term karume is something very important, because in the Buddhist teachings, what you do, you will get the benefit, either good or bad. If you do something bad, now in Sinhala we have so many sayings, kala kala de, pala pala de. And at the same time, we as Sri Lankans, we have so many proverbs like utsahavantya jayagani. So like that,
those things are not said.
Not said now. Yeah. Our elders used to say that, and especially I remember my father and my mother, they always said, anytime, utsahavantya jayagani. So that worked in our minds. I think what should be done is, present day mothers and fathers also must practice this, and they must tell the children, not push them so much. Now, some parents, what they do is go and study, you have the exams. That's not the way to do it. Let's study. I always tell parents, I always tell children that studying at home should be a collective thing. A mother should not say, go and study, and then the mother to sit in in front of the television and watch teledrama. That's not the way to do it. A mother must say, let's go and study. Then the child also will get the message. So like that, utsahavantya jayagani is something that we had in our society, in our culture, and now I don't know whether that is said and done. So I think it's time for us to remember.
Make that change. But also, whilst we do it within our system, systemically, with your experiences in Japan, is there something that you can share with us as to how the state structure, of course us doing it as individuals and parents is nice, but how the state structure of Japan encourage the people to aspire and build a better tomorrow, how every minute is to be, I mean, I'm sure you know that average Japanese sleeps only 6 hours a day. So how does the state structure, the system, encourage Japanese people?
In Japan, there is a EA system, IEA. That's a group. First it was used for family, and later it's for the company also. So you have a feeling for the company. As much as you have a feeling for your family, you have a feeling, great feeling, strong feeling for your company. So with that, you work hard, and everybody works hard. Sometimes they are called workaholics. They work very much. And also...
But they seem to have proved themselves.
Yeah, that's right. You said about 6 hours of sleep. And I think most Japanese must be doing that. Because on the trains, what we see is all the time as they get into the train,
Yeah.
they start sleeping,
Yes.
nodding,
Yes.
and they don't fall down also. They
No.
are used to it.
Yes.
And then the moment it comes to the destination, the place where they have to get off, they quickly get up and they are up. So they have got used to that system, and they are well disciplined. Only thing is now,
How have, once again, how have, I mean, of course by nature they must be having it in them. Maybe we must get that. But attitudinal change, how do we as a system encourage that?
yes,
What
now
can
when I say they are methodical and they are like that, that doesn't mean that we are not so.
Yes.
We are methodical. That's why we could come up to this, you and I and maybe others who are
Several others
watching.
watching,
Yeah, and our government is doing a lot now to beautify the place and then give a better feeling to the people after 30 years of torture everybody underwent. So like that, not that we are not having that feeling. Being a Sri Lankan, I'm telling them, I'm telling the Sri Lankans, I'm telling our viewers, you have to do it more and more and more. And
the majority must come on board
that's
on,
right.
on this journey.
Yes, and idling now, even earlier times, Kammalia was a bad person, the one who doesn't do work, any work. So even today, if you don't do any work and if you idle, that's not good for you and not good for the society, not good for the country.
And
so
you'll be the best person to comment on this. The term Kala Kanni comes
Kala Kanni, the person who like eats up the time, that means you don't do anything. You just waste time. So I think today we must be happy because our youngsters, young people, only thing is they go from one class to another, one place to another, one computer class to another class maybe.
It's certainly much more competitive. We have to sympathize with that.
It is, yes. In fact, sometimes we say the present day society is running after money and they are so competitive. They have to be competitive, as you say. And we cannot blame our parents about putting the children in this competition. They have to do it, but then at the same time they have to think of their childhood.
Yes.
And they must be allowed to play, they must be allowed to watch the environment, and they must be mixing up with their elders if possible.
Try and find a balance. That's what
how
you're trying
much did we learn from our grandmothers and
on their laps.
grandfathers? In fact, I wrote a song for my granddaughter saying that Panchi Petai Olinda Puru Duta Koindo, and those things are not available for them.
Is that the reason that made you write that?
Yes, because when
you just want to say a few sentences from
actually yes. Now one song I wrote for my elder granddaughter, and that says Dururata Sitiyat Oba Lakdiyani, Dururata Hadunat Oba Lakdiyani, Dururata Vadunat Oba Lakdiyani, Niraturu Oba Ape Podidiyani. And
that's because she is growing up abroad.
Growing up abroad, and
but that's a very nice concept.
I have written in that Punchi Duge Iskole Punchi Yaluo, Punchi Duge Attamma Koi Dasaidu. Then I tell her Punchi Divainak Tibeya Punchi Divainak Tibeya Punchi unat e ageya mahangu minakse. So I try to inculcate in my granddaughter's, it's like a tiny pearl, but it's a mahangu divaina. So
and
like that.
Your earlier lines, Punchi Diyaniya Pitrata Hitiyat Lakdiyaniya.
You are a Lakdiyaniya, yes. And
Professor, you are an absolute inspiration. We have to rush into a break, but there is much more to discuss with our guest tonight. Don't go away. We're going to go to a quick break and come back with Professor Kusuma Karunaratne. Hello again and welcome back to Checkmate. We are on the last lap, as it were, for tonight's program, and we're in the wonderful and prestigious company of Professor Kusuma Karunaratne, who's been sharing much with us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have her on our program tonight. But we now get into her pet area and on the building of, as you know, Checkmate is all about building a better Sri Lanka, building a brighter future for our future generations, and this is her area that she has worked her life on. And we do this, Professor, we usually take our guests on comments they've made to the public, and we ask them to elaborate on it. You say to the Daily News of in August 2007, 4 years ago, "Today there are many avenues for younger generations, but unfortunately most of them lack literary skills as they do not read much. They are deviating from the arts and moving towards technology. Technical knowledge is very important, but reading creates a full human being with feelings." And you go on. And this is the old saying that reading maketh a man, in your case a woman.
Reading maketh a full man or full woman, yes.
You want to elaborate?
Yes, now reading is very, very necessary. However much we have computers, internet and whatever, I think reading a book is very important. Reading habit should be developed in a person during the very young days. Now our parents, so any parent would start reading a book to the child when the child is very small, and then with that a child will develop a liking. Now actually my little granddaughter, she turns the pages. She can't read, but the father reads the book, she turns the pages. So during that time, if you inculcate that habit in a child, then when they grow up they will want a book. Now some children want to go to bed with a book in hand. Sometimes that's what bedtime stories are for, and sometimes the mother will read the story, sometimes the child will take at least take the book to bed. So reading habit should be started, actually developed from childhood. And now our young children, the parents will say our children have not much time to read because in school they have full day's work, and then after school they go for extra classes, tuition classes. So where is the time for them to read? Actually time must be found from somewhere during the day to read at least a little every day.
Can I just play devil's advocate with you and put this question to you? In your day, and perhaps to a larger extent in our day, we didn't have a choice. Books were the only choice that children had. But now, the entire book is put into a film and shown on TV. The entire, say, for example, the Hardy Boys series that we read, or the Secret 7 series, or even the Tintins or the Asterix are now Sura Papa or whatever on TV. So, on the part of the child, why would they waste time reading 3 hours on a book when they can watch it in half an hour on TV? How do you get them over this?
Yeah, actually visually when you can see something nice, a person will get addicted to. But then it is for the elders, for the parents to guide the children. Of course, you must not say, don't watch TV. Now, some parents will say, now today you are starting school, no TV. That's not a good way of doing that. You have to moderate, actually. During the vacation, maybe the children can be asked to, allowed to watch more TV, but then the parents must be able to explain to the children that reading is very necessary, and it is, of course, seeing a book as a film on TV is very different from reading a book. While reading, you can think over and over again, and you finish reading the book, close the book, and next time again you can take the book and read, and you learn the language. By watching TV, of course, you learn the language to some extent, but then reading, you read the word, you see the word, and then however much computers, internet, and then e-books and other things come, I think the normal books, reading normal books is very, very necessary. And parents will have to manage the children's time. Now they will go to school and go to extra classes, and in the evening, of course, the parents will say they come back so tired after tuition classes. How can we tell them to read books? No, but even at least 10 minutes a day. It must be a habit. I think in a house, if the mother reads a book, if the father reads a book, sometimes what happens is
the habit.
maybe father will read the newspaper, but whatever reading, if the mother reads a book, and as I said earlier, come, let's read, and everybody reading time. I don't know whether this can be done in all cases, but
like
at
you
least
say, you must try.
You must try. And managing time is the responsibility of the parents, I think.
We're going to come to that in a minute.
Yes.
But then, once again, on this literary question, something that a former guest of ours commented on, and be having a D-Lit and being languages and playing with languages most of your life, I'd like to post this to you. A guest who was from abroad, obviously studied abroad, but head of institution here, said that he saw a difference, not necessarily bad or good, I must say that to justify it, but he said that there was a difference in what he saw here in the examination technique and what he saw there. For example, there, in the case of, say, use the example Oliver Twist, and the famous lines that all of us know, please sir, may I have some more. Here, we probably may ask, who said to whom, where කවුද කාටද කොතනද කිව්වේ මොන අවස්ථාවේද? But there he said the same question may be posed in this manner. What was Dickens trying to say about British society then? Speaking through Oliver when he said, please sir, may I have some more? How do we make this
I think that's a, I don't know, maybe a novelty. We have to create new ways of asking questions. As you say, maybe in the exam papers, things are kind of,
Yeah, because කවුද කාටද කොතනද කිව්වේ, you memorize,
yes,
you go and write.
And write.
But if you ask what was Dickens trying to say about society,
yes,
you're asking the child to comment on.
That's right.
So how do we make this mental?
You leave room for the child to think.
Yeah. How do we bring this to Sri Lanka? How do we make this change?
Of course, now in the present syllabus, I don't know how much and how far you can do it. But then what I feel is, now the teachers may not agree with you because they say during the school periods you have limited time and you have to cover the syllabus. But then, why can't they take at least a few minutes from that time and utilize that for this kind of some novel thing? I'm sure the children will like it better than what they have in the
asking them to memorize.
Asking them to memorize, yes. So some novel steps should be taken, and the thing is, now some teachers may do it, but then I don't know whether that kind of thing will be accepted in school. But I am sure in any case a teacher can decide, of course taking a few minutes from that period to talk to the children about various things, about what happened, and get the children to talk. And then they will start, they will have creative minds when
in your opinion, are there, I'm asking you because maybe our viewers would like to know, are you aware, because you seem to be this champion of the cause of making reading more available to children. Are there any moves at the moment, or is there any move to make reading more habitable in children?
Yes, I think now people say rather than giving a gun or some other toy to the child for the birthday as a gift, you must start giving the child a book as a birthday gift. I think some parents and some people have already started, and children seem to like it. Now this International Book Fair, parents come with children and children love to buy books. Some people ask, they buy books and take home the books, but do they read? That's another question. But that's up to right. But then it's for the parents too, for the elders, for the parents, and also for the teachers, because you have an accepted way of teaching in class, but then you have the freedom to at least steal 5 minutes of that time and say something new to the child. I am sure that kind of teacher will be well accepted and more appreciated by the child.
Now, Professor, another quick angle. I always tell this to my production team, Sanjeev and the crowd. Our guests are the creme de la creme of society. We'd like to speak to you for 4 or 5 hours, but unfortunately we are stuck to time. You have an extensive CV. You've been a career woman all your life. And I was very interested in this comment that you've made. In today's society, women have entered many disciplines and career avenues. They have the strength and determination. Only certain evil forces will try to prevent them from reaching greater horizons. But then you say, we're talking of you, I manage my time and was methodical in my work, which spared me time to spend with my children. And in my family, a mother should be very close to the children and discuss their problems. How did you, and how would the young Sri Lankan mother watching you balance that career and the motherhood?
Yes, balancing, we always say time management. I think all ladies, all women, all mothers are capable of managing time. Only thing is whether everybody does it. So managing time is not impossible, it is possible. What I normally do is, now tomorrow what I have to do, actually not only tomorrow, I have my diary, the next week work, everything is marked there, but whatever comes new will drop within that little spaces that are there. So anyway, managing time is the most important thing. Now mothers will come back from office and they'll be so tired and they have to do their cooking and all that, so they will say, I have no time for children. But they should find time.
Did you do all this?
I did, actually. I was with my children. Fortunately, I had my mother also to assist me. And I had time for my children and my husband had time for the children. So we both did a lot with them. And we discussed things with them and they discussed things with us. And not only about studies but other things, sports or whatever, music or whatever. And about life we discuss. So parents should do that. Then only, as I said in that comment that you made now, quoted now, a mother especially should be like a friend to the child. Now in earlier society, fathers were treated as, you know, somebody who cannot approach. But now I think father and mother both, they are very close to the child. Only thing is, there are some parents, some fathers and some mothers who think that they should earn as much as possible for the benefit of the child. By the time they have collected so much money, the child has gone maybe astray or some, cannot be corrected. So what they should do is, from very young age, they must be with the children as much as possible. Of course, people are very busy, that's true. But then
somehow try and find that time.
But then your children are your children and you brought them to this world, and you should make sure that
it's your responsibility, your duty.
It is your responsibility.
Now there you go. Those future generations of Sri Lankan ladies, particularly, not particularly the ladies, everyone, but particularly the ladies who would probably look, at least after today, upon Professor Kusuma Karunaratne as your role model. But this is a lady who's speaking of balancing that time, who has been the first female professor of Sinhala, first woman to head the department. She would later on go to become the dean, the first acting vice chancellor of the University of Colombo, and Fulbright fellow, winner of many awards, including the Leah Varuna Award, speaking of the importance of balancing time as a mother and a housewife whilst you build your career. On that note, Professor, can I also ask you, you've written much in addition to your extensive CV and your busy schedule and managing your time as a housewife, you've written much. You were speaking of your tsunami books that you want to comment?
Yes, it's the title is Punchi Kate Vature Gihin. Some people make a mistake saying Punchi Kate Vature Gihin. Right. It's not Vature Gihin, it's Vature Gihin. Now, there is a story by that with the title. I wrote 12 stories and published a book titled Punchi Kate Vature Gihin. The theme is tsunami, and the bad experience we all had, not only Sri Lanka, several other countries. So I took actually the human situations. How parents lost their children, how husbands lost their wives, and the problems that the children had, and all kinds of things. And the events that I had heard of and seen in newspapers and so on, I recreated those. So
these are not factual stories, but they're based on
facts. But then the story is mine. It's a news story actually, not the way it really happened. And this book actually is now translated into English by my friend Swarnakanti Rajapaksa. It's the title is Gone with the Wave, and then it translated Gone with the Wave. It's translated into Japanese by my former student, who is the Sinhala professor in Tokyo now, Tadashi Noguchi, and the title is Tsunami. Actually, even though we say tsunami, the real Japanese word is tsunami, T-S-U-N-A.
Oh, I see.
There's no long
There's no hyphen on the A.
Yes. It's Altayanna, Suyanna, Nayanna, Miyanna.
Tsunami.
Tsunami. So my student Tadashi Noguchi published the Japanese translation with the Japanese title, and also it's translated into Spanish and Tamil translation, then Italian, German, those are on the way.
Can we, much to talk, but time is running out. Can we leave, we always ask our viewers this question for the benefit of our viewers, what does Kusuma Karunaratne have to say to the future Sri Lanka watching out there, in this new future that we have got to build a better tomorrow? What is your message to the people watching there?
Actually, we have had bad experiences, several bad experiences, and now we have come to a stage where we can breathe freely. So we must make use of that new environment, new atmosphere, and think of our future and our children's future. And we must try to be honest, methodical, and also we must manage time correctly, and we have to be a good example to our children and to our younger generation.
Professor, I keep on repeating this. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the program. Thank you very much for consenting to be on Checkmate. I know that we were trying for a long time to get you. And there you go, folks at home. We come to the end of our Checkmate tonight. As we bid adieu to Professor Kusuma Karunaratne, we leave you with the hope of seeing you once again on another Checkmate. Thank you very much for being with us. Do write in to us, communicate with us on Facebook. We'll see you again.
Ayubowan, and thank you very much for inviting me for this program.
You're most
Thank you.
So, together with the production team of Checkmate, we once again bid you good night. And we do so with the hope of seeing you again on another one of our programs in the not too distant future. And I leave you with these words from H.W. Longfellow. Heights by great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, for they, whilst their companions slept, were toiling upwards in the night. Future Sri Lanka, young Sri Lanka, to see you again.